Hi everyone, Byron here. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Heather, are you on the line yet?
I am on the line.
Oh, fun.
Yes, thank you.
So happy to have you on board here today.
Oh, thank you so much. This will be a good time.
Right on. We're actually live now, and everyone's listening in to us, just so you know. So let's not tell our normal jokes that we tell one another.
Leave those for later. Got it.
But, you know, criticizing the industry and pinpointing a few people at Google and, you know, the normal stuff that we do. But
That's fun stuff.
we'll hold off on all of that. But I'm super excited today to take on a really interesting topic, which is how to make content snap, crackle, and pop. This is a presentation that I gave at Conversion Conference with my pal Tim Ash, who asked me to be the Trojan horse in a conference filled with analysts and conversion experts, and be the guy that comes in there and disrupts everything and says, hey, actually it's quality content, folks, that's the secret sauce here, not how you mess with the landing page and try to hyper-focus on a particular page. So I'll be talking about that today. But I really was excited for you to join, Heather, because you come from a wonderful angle of content and SEO. Copywriting, of course, is your home base, and you've been teaching and training writers forever. So I'm excited for you to chime in at the end of the presentation and cast in your thoughts and your views and give me the normal critique that you lay on me whenever we speak together, telling me telling me all the 27 things I did wrong, and you know, no,
I don't do that.
I'm just joking. You've been great, and we've really enjoyed speaking together over the years. So I'm psyched to have you join along. So, without further ado, I think I'm going to dive in and just continue to walk you through this presentation, everyone, and really have a go here. So. Your two speakers are myself. This is the 47th webinar that I've done on the content marketing topic, which just means that the hair on my head is less than what you actually see in that image right there. But it's been a lot of fun, and there's been a lot of change in the industry, and I'll talk about that today with a big announcement that was made this week, and a neat article that was written about a company that I think is leading the way and getting a lot of press around it. But for the most part, let's kind of show you what I'm going to walk you through here today. First of all, a brief introduction to where this crazy phrase came from and what it means when it comes to content. I think everyone will enjoy that. And then we'll talk a little. I'm going to actually show some samples today, which has been a popular request at various conferences that I've spoken at. People like hearing the theory of content marketing and what's happening, new methodology, technology, tactics, and tools. But very rarely have I in the past gotten into actually showing samples of quality content. So I have a really neat series of kind of before and after examples. And the way I'm going to pan that out, there's a lot of them. I'm going to actually show you on the screen the good example that's written well, and then I'm going to read to you the bad example. However, the deck will show both of them, so if you choose to download the deck, which everyone will be able to do, you'll be able to see these before and afters and have some fun and entertainment looking through them to see what we've done. And then I'll walk you through some tips and advice on how to make your content snap, crackle, and pop if you like what you hear today. A couple of ground rules just before I begin. Please, please, please ask questions throughout the presentation. Glenn Jackman is on the line. He will sort of moderate in the end and throw some questions at Heather and I. And feel free to ask some questions for Heather as well as myself. We'll both take a stab at your questions and see what angle you're coming from and see if we can help you out. Great turnout today. Excited about that. And overall, let me now sort of have at it. So do ask us questions. And let me just show you the screen one more time. Please tweet for both Heather and I. We love your Twitter love. We love Twitter love. So send a heads up to us if you like the presentation. We'd really appreciate it. And you'll see this at the end of the presentation hopefully as well again. All right. So without further ado, a brief introduction to Snap, Crackle, and Pop. The challenge we have continues to be the same in the advertising and marketing world that we faced for many years, and that is, in a matter of seconds, some would argue milliseconds, readers determine if your content and your products and services match their wants and needs. We're up against literally milliseconds when it comes to content. And as a result of all of that, the quality and the publishing frequency of your content is now plays a much bigger part of the overall conversion funnel. And that is certainly defined as turning somebody from a browser into a believer and a believer into a buyer, and that's what you'll sort of see. Google is leading the charge with Panda and Penguin, and some would argue even Hummingbird, that you really do need to continue publishing a steady stream of content. Customers are asking me all the time, how much content do I need? How frequently do I need to publish it? Where do I need to publish it? That's what content marketing strategy is really all about. And the answer is you need a lot of content, and you need to publish it in multiple platforms, multiple channels to really be successful. And if you don't, you will suffer the consequences. And that's really what Panda and Penguin did, is they really knocked a lot of sites out of the search result positions and forced those companies to remove their duplicate content and step up into the real world of making sure that they're wise in what they're publishing and how they're publishing it. And of course, content marketing, you probably have seen this slide a million times, hopefully. If you haven't, that's too bad. This is a great slide that confirms that about 33% of the marketing spend is now focused on content marketing. And this is a new piece. There's a really neat article in GeekWire that you might look up that is declaring corporate sites are dead, arguing that storytelling, as displayed here through Coca-Cola, is really becoming the mainstream, or may become the mainstream, for what large companies and even small companies need to do to connect with their users. And it's really, if you look at some of these headlines, stories, opinions, brands, videos, unbottled, food, music, I mean, that's a little bit odd for Coca-Cola to be diving into these more lifestyle-driven topics, but that's what you're going to see on their website. It almost feels like a magazine. It feels like an informational portal where you could actually find good information that was well beyond just selling more products. So neat article there. Check it out in GeekWire. But in the end of the day, I think we all know that customers demand helpful information and answers to questions that is written in a way that's engaging and entertaining, and that's really the demand that we have on our shoulders today as we begin thinking about content. And you, of course, need to content in multiple channels, and now as the channel seems to be increasing, not decreasing, so we need to be cognizant of that. And if you think about it, at least from my perspective, and everyone else's I would assume as well, is the customer is now really the center of the movement or the revolution that's sweeping the web. And the real challenge that folks like Heather and I and all of us listening on the line that create content and or are part of the content creation process for either ourselves or customers, the big question is, how do we learn what customers want and need? And there are some tricks to that, like looking, first of all, having a search box on your website. Second of all, looking to see what people are searching for on your website. That would be a revealing to your creative team of writers creating content for you. And that's one of the problems that we're really experiencing right now, is that writers are not armed with the ammunition of what the wants and needs are. And it's difficult to convey the style and the tone to a writer when they're left with a title of an article that you want them to create and some keywords you want them to use, and perhaps
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy.
that problem, we've created something called creativebriefwizard.com that you can check out that tries to allow you to sort of fill out a form that says, we want to get inside your head, and then give that document to a writer. So you can check that out. But the real challenge is, what is high quality content, and why does it turn browsers into believers and believers into buyers? This is the mystery that we need to dive much deeper into. And clearly, that quality content will offer almost religiously this sort of aha moment, something that you learn from that content, and that's really the challenge that you have throughout this process is, how do you find those aha moments? How do you create it in an engaging way? And that will ultimately keep people coming back for more. So that sort of brings us to this snap, crackle, and pop concept that I developed, pulling from cereal that you might remember, Sugar Pops, some many years ago, but I thought it made sense for what I was seeing with content that really did have lift to it. So quality content, has that snap, crackle, and pop that really causes a reaction with readers that not only happens when you read it, but I would argue long after readers pass it by. So let me sort of walk you through the steps here of what each of these three elements are. So from my perspective, content snaps when readers can quickly understand the value proposition. They understand why it was written and what purpose it had and how it can help them make their life smarter, better, faster, or wiser. That is a key element that you need to get to. Where you insert that value also becomes very critical, because you may lose a reader, which I like calling a reader, by the way, not a customer. You may lose a reader if you're not carefully placing that value proposition somewhere that makes sense. The next part is the crackle. So from my perspective, a crackle could be a laugh, certainly, a smile, but it also would be at least a reaction that connects with the reader and connects the reader to the content in a personal way. And that needs to happen. It doesn't happen enough, and great writing will tend to have these elements. Content pops when it motivates action or continues to inspire based upon what you're reading. This is really where the conversion happens, arguably, but unless you have both snap, crackle prior to the pop happening, I would argue that it is not as effective. So it's not just a call to action, for example, it's the road of intrigue and mystery and storytelling that forces the pop, which helps the motivation, and continues on through this channel. So what we find is that hopefully content that has that snap, crackle, and pop gets shared and passed around, and that's the real magnifying potential of content that gets that can help you improve conversion rates and everything else to do with this. So let me now have some fun, and hopefully I wish I could hear people laugh when they read these examples that you're about to hear, but unfortunately we can't unless we turned on all of the microphone ability, which would probably blow up GoToWebinar. But what I want to do is to show you some real examples, and I'm going to read to you the examples as mentioned that really suck, the examples that are boring, if you will, and that don't have snap, crackle, and pop, and then I'm going to let you read a screen that has the better version of it. So I'm going to be talking and you're going to be reading, and that's how we're going to pound through this, because there are a lot of examples that I want to go through so you can really get a feel for all of this. So without further ado, I'm going to show you this one. The first one we're going to talk about is a home decor company. So let's walk through this. Here's the bad one that I'm going to read, and here's the good one that you can read yourself. So here's the bad version. The Casa company was founded in 1983. The company makes blankets, tapestries, hangings, and other home decor. It makes home sweet home. That's pretty bad. Hopefully what you're reading is much better. Let's take a look at the next one. This blanket is fleece, which is a good selling point. It is warm and cozy and makes the room brighter. Fairly lame. Whereas what you're reading, once again, hopefully much better. We should have Heather laugh here, by the way. Feel free to laugh, Heather, if you want. And brighten up our day. Let's look at the next one. Some homepage copy. Welcome to Casa Company homepage. Look around the website and you might find home decor you might like. You can buy things from the website, or you can look into the retailer section that says where to buy it in stores. Gosh, that actually, something close to that actually exists on a website, if you can believe it. Can't tell you the site, but these are real-life examples. You can't make this stuff up, folks. All right, let's look at some calls to action here. Some bad examples for us. Click here to join the mailing list for the Casa company. Click here to get a discount coupon for your first order. Click here to get a free lamp from the Casa company. Stale, boring, mundane copy. Much better what you're reading now. All right, let's try this one. Some headlines. Whoops, here's mine. Read this Chick Casa Company blog to see what is new and exciting in home decor and blankets and other things. The Chick Casa Company has new blankets for fall, and they sold 5,000 of them to a school district in Montana. Let's look at some emails. Thank you for signing up for the Chick Casa Company emails. The company will send you emails that have information on the latest home decor trends, news about home decor, and exciting things that happen with the Chick Casa Company. Let's take a look at a new guide announcement. The Chick Casa Company has a new offer, and it involves giving you a free home decor guide called Making a House a Cozy Home. The thinking is that you will see things in the guide that the Chick Casa Company sells, and then you will buy the things from Chick Casa Company. The company is always honest, so they're telling it like it is. Wow, scary stuff. Email subject lines. Welcome, new Chick Casa Company customer. Another subject line, free. Which, by the way, would be, of course, caught in the spam bots, but anyway, free. New Chick Casa Company home decor guide for free. Free twice. Beautiful stuff. Bad examples. Let's see. Let's look at some subject lines. Okay. Well, actually, I just did that. Let's see here. Whoops. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's go to the insurance company. So here's a service company. So I didn't want to just show people some examples within a retail environment. I wanted to show some service examples as well, knowing there would be some people on the line that were dove in that space. So let's have you look at first some about copy. So the Anderson Insurance Company sells insurance. Whether you need life insurance or house insurance or health insurance, you can count on Anderson Insurance. They sell car insurance too. Press release. The Anderson Company is announcing they will be at Main Street Health Fair giving out free insurance consultations. You must go. You won't want to miss this. Twisting my arm. All right, let's try a news article. The last Saturday on October 19th is at 10 a.m. an informative time was had. Oh, I'm sorry. Last Saturday on October 19th at 10 a.m., an informative time was had by all when the Anderson Insurance Company had a booth at the Main Street Health Fair and gave out free consultations. One agent said people learned a lot. People learned a lot, he said. I love that. Always brings a smile when I read that. I think this version is quite a bit better. All right, let's take a look at the featured article. The Anderson Insurance Company starts with A, so they are at the top of the list of the alphabet. Last month, they were at the top of the BB list too, when they received a special award. It was just one of many awards over the years and years of good A service. Really bad. 2-star at best writing. All right, let's look at a blog post here. You need home insurance to protect your home from fire and floods and other disasters. In fact, if you have a mortgage and the mortgage says you have to have a home insurance, so you can't get around it. Perhaps a fact, yes, that's true, but the delivery, very poor. All right, let's look at an ebook. A few more here. This ebook is going to explain how to figure out how to get the insurance policies you need to suit your very own needs. You will first look at things you need to protect, and then you will see if you are protecting them right away. Thank you for that great wisdom. Let's look at a brief bio. John Anderson, founder of Anderson Insurance Company, wrote a lot of books about insurance and finances and started his own insurance company named after him. Wow, I'm thinking maybe, what do you think, 6th grade there, Heather? That's what I'm thinking. All right. This stuff is real, people. All right, let's look at a review. The Anderson Insurance Company is really good because they really care. They aren't just out to make a buck, even though they sold me all kinds of insurance. Very interesting. Okay. Facebook update. Click here to see 3 types of insurance you might not even know exist. They are pet insurance, insurance for your shoes, another one that will make you surprised. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Let's look at a tweet. Weird and freaky insurance. Look now. I actually might click on that. Nice tweet here. I love this. No, it's not weird to insure your shoes, your nose, or your bunny rabbit. Check out 3 lesser-known insurance types. I love that. Great writing. All right. So there ends the fun part of the presentation. Let's dive into some tips and advice to really make you understand more deeply what's going on here. So for starters, how do you create content that Snap, Crackle, and Pop? I would suggest that your company should climb a mountain with your creative team and really try to create a mantra, as Guy Kawasaki has led us all to understand, and really define your overarching purpose. From that overarching purpose, I think you can begin to develop a content strategy that has an edge, that has some distinction, that has some vision for your creative team, to really start creating better content that has a purpose and an edge. The other thing to really look very, very closely at, and this is particularly true for those that are trying to look at individual pages to improve conversion rates and the ingredients of those pages as the gateway to do that, it's basically the wrong approach. And I'm going to kind of walk you through this so you can understand this. I think this is a really important part of this presentation today, and even how we write now. So the way that we think about content in general is to sort of put the ingredients of what we want to talk about down on paper. Often we're asked in the copywriting world to list the features and the benefits and spike up the call to action. We do our research, we find out what the competitors are doing, and it's really a focus on the ingredients. We then map out alternative copy and start writing, of course, and we pick the images and try to find both the copy and the images that work well together. We pick the winners. And then we infer that the better the copy with that single area and the better of all those ingredients, the better the cake. And then we artfully combine them all, and so they all look nice together. They look pretty. They look great. And that makes a big assumption that if you have all these individual ingredients that are stacked on top of one another, that it will be a great tasting cake, and that's just not how it works. We have to look much deeper into the story being told, the value of that story, the meaning of that story, how it's presented, and the elements that we looked at today. So don't focus on the ingredients of a page, particularly if conversion is what you're trying to do. You need to look at the story being told, a much bigger picture. The next thing to look at is getting the right content to the right person at the right time. We've talked about this, but here's some examples of really how to do that and some actual copy that you see in green here. I've worked in the advertising industry for about 8 years and learned that in a matter of milliseconds people form an opinion and determine whether they want to stop on an ad on a page. And that's really a key factor for headline writing and imagery within ads, and lots of focus group testing happening out there of how people look through magazines and which ads they stop on, which really starts to help identify the strength of the ad and how it's helping to support the brand. But the preliminary review, particularly for new customers visiting your website, is critical. And so you want to speak their language. And you're not sure if they're proficient or not, so you need some copy on there that would connect with them. For example, you're new to this art and science, but you're not alone. Make them feel good about getting there. Of course, we have more deeper knowledge-seeking readers, and where you're trying to earn trust and build trust. So you want to perhaps add an element of surprise at that stage. You'd be surprised to see who's using this project. We were. I mean, that's an interesting, intriguing thing that might make you want to read more. demonstrating capability, another key aspect, how products solve problems, and here's some copy. If the ingredients are not mixed well, your time is wasted. That's why you should go here, or that's why you should do the following. You're warning at the same time of demonstrating capability and being an informational and educational guide, and cautioning them that they'll waste a lot of time if they're not cognizant on that. Next, obtaining permission. These classic, drive action, sign up, so much pressure here. Are there creative ways to do that? We'd like for you to give it a try, and we're so convinced you'll love it. Here's what we're going to do. This is a much more logical way. It's difficult to see a call to action like that on the bottom of the page, but that's what you're trying to do, is to be honest, be sincere, and reward them with great copy that guides them throughout the whole journey. I think one of the biggest things that our writers at Writer Access are afraid to do when they're creating content for customers is to be creative and to take on creative risk. That is hard to do. You need courage to do that. You also need to be good at it. That's the problem. And there's a guide that I've developed called the Professional Writing Guide, Skill and Price Guide, that everyone's going to be able to get a copy on. I think it offers some wonderful examples, and everyone's going to get a free download on that as part of listening and tuning in. But taking on that creative risk is probably one of the hardest things to do, particularly in the marketplace environment that all of our writers here at Writer Access are working in. But do you know how to make people laugh with your copy and content? It's much different than making people laugh with your voice. Are you willing to touch the heart and to take that risk? And are you worried that clients may not be receptive to that? I would ask you to step out, take some chances, raise your game, and start creating that wonderful content. If people could only see the response that clients have regularly when they work with great writers that understand how to be creative with writing, I think that everyone would want to jump on that bandwagon and do more of it. So the other thing to consider is just applying different strokes for different folks, and what I mean by that is, when in Rome, do as the Romans, speak the language of the readers, and deep content for deep readers, lighter content for more impulsive buyers, and really developing an architecture that is designed to move people around based upon what their needs are. This is a really interesting New York Times study that I read. It was by the New York Times Customer Insight Group that talked about the biggest reasons that people share content. Not surprisingly, with the advent of Facebook and Twitter and sharing information that's entertaining rather than just informational, entertainment was a big value, but also bringing value in entertainment to other people. And I think that when you share things, it sort of begins to define yourself to the other people that you're sharing, and that becomes a big factor. Growing and nurturing relationships naturally, we're all understanding of that. And also just exhibiting your connection to the world and the community. I think that's quite fascinating. What happens when you don't blog for 3 months? Is that a declaration that you're out of touch with the world and your community? Probably. Whereas when you're talking about the current issues and chiming into the conversation, you're exhibiting and displaying your connection, and that's a key factor. And surprisingly, the fifth on the list was to actually showcase support for a brand or a cause, and I think that's something that is really even happening now with this whole Coca-Cola piece that was rented, that was spotted. People are beginning to chime into that conversation, and I was doing some research on that. Some really neat stuff happening with people forming opinions on whether whether the sky is falling and the corporate website as we know it is dying. So these are key issues for us to think about as we plug this along. So I mentioned a really cool tool that's free, and it actually has no label of Writer Access on it whatsoever, but you guys can go check this out. It's called creativebriefwizard.com, and it allows writers to use this for their own customers or to send their own customers to this wizard that will allow the client to actually start describing what they want with the copy they're creating. This is one of our really key distinguishers for writer access, I believe, when we work with clients inside the platform with this wizard. We're really digging into the target audience, profiling the target audience and asking the tone and the style requirements and documenting all of that so the writer can quickly ascertain exactly what the goals are for a particular project. So use it, take a look at it. I think it'd be helpful for everyone. So, obviously we all need to stop selling and start providing solutions to problems, and hopefully that's what you saw even in some of the examples that I wrote. But the key to that is helpful information, solutions to problems, and those two things combined help you earn trust with prospect customers and readers. Another key thing to do is just plain finding meaning, to engage readers. What's worth living for, or dying for? What will bring a smile onto my face? What makes the world better? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves perpetually as we're creating content. And so many customers, unfortunately, are riveted to their features and their benefits, or even their keywords that they're ramming down the throats of writers. It's time to step away from that and saying, hey, if every asset that I published had some engagement element to it, a little bit of snap, crackle, and pop that was feathered into the content in creative ways, I think the website would be better, the content would be better, and all would be better with regards to sales in the end result of what this is all aiming towards. So I've gotten a lot of questions over the years about, okay, Byron, I get it. I need to write about creative things, but what are those things? How do I find those things? And it's a tough question. You need to dig a lot. I mean, you need to think like an actor, like a journalist, and really get a crowbar out and get inside the head of the people within your company. Are there trade show interests that are happening, or remarkable employees, or green initiatives, speaking engagements? You can see the things that I bolded here, but here's hopefully a good list for everyone to circulate perhaps with their employees, and let your base camp of employees become your curators of these stories that can be told, that begin to shape your brand and define who you are, combining those great stories with great writing that's developed with things like the creative brief, with good methodology of finding the snap, crackle, and pop and the storytelling element. These are the things that begin to add up to creating those great stories and the great content that you need to be successful these days. So how do you develop an actual story that sells? You have to certainly get under the skin of the target audience and understand them. I spoke about that at the beginning of this presentation. It's probably the single most difficult thing to do and the biggest guessing game we do, yet it's the foundation for where the story comes from. How do we find those wants and needs of our customers? How do we learn about them? Well, there are some tricks to that that I've talked about in many other webinars, and one of them is just plain looking at which of your articles are most popular, which of your blog posts get the most traffic, which get the longest time on the page, which gets shared the most. That's beginning to understand what your target audience wants and needs. Developing an engaging, passionate voice, once again, hard to do. Creative brief might help. We have a lot of customers that just don't know what they want, to be honest, until they see it. Hopefully some examples in this deck might give you an example of good copy that's elevated to the next level, and help you be confident that that edgy, engaging, passionate voice is a better way to write. And sort of conveying that to our writers is the key to making this all work. Writing the lines that engage, and they can be simple lines. This can be simple. It can be great command of a thesaurus in finding, powerful words that enlighten and engage just in the way you talk and the way you speak and the way you write and the language that you use. But much like actors need to revise the script, that's what split testing can help you do. And once you develop your formula, your haiku, if you will, for the formula that you use for writing, which involves all of the elements, then it just needs to hopefully perform day after day, and you need to track that performance. So obviously, stop thinking so hard and put professional writers to work. Sometimes that's the hardest thing for people to do, is to let this go and let professional writers jump up to the table here and do their job. A lot of people, even like me, I might add, you would like to write what I call the Byron bad version of our copy and then move it over to a writer, and I would often judge writers with how far they moved from my original content. My strategy now, in working with some amazing writers at Writer Access, like Rin, who I use all the time, I encourage Rin, here's literally the Byron bad version that I want you to not follow at all. I want to give you a base camp of what I think should be written and what maybe is important to me, but I want you to spin it in a way that gives it that snap, crackle, and pop, which is a radical departure from what I might have originally created. So my final thought for you here is, as we look at the famous David Ogilvie's book on advertising, and one of my famous quotes that I can recite without looking at us, but my way of explaining this, if we hire people, or writers I would argue, who are smaller than we are, we shall become a company of dwarfs. If we hire writers that are bigger than ourselves, we will become a company of giants. And I think that's really, really true now more than ever when it comes to writing. Let the pros do the work and hire great writers and educate and acclimate those writers on tips and techniques that they need to be successful. So we're going to pop this page up for everyone. I'll send you this link, but I do have a really exciting new book that everyone will get a free copy of that registered for this domain name. It's called Professional Writing Skill and Price Guide. And basically, I've tried to walk people through understanding that there are different star levels of writers at Writer Access that produce standard orders, but there's another higher caliber of writers we call premium writers, that involve being tested in copywriting, tech writing, and journalism, separate tests that we're certifying as able for this premium writing, which is also going to come with a whole bunch of other attachments to it with higher price ranges that start from 10 cents to $1 per word, and all this fun stuff, and including attribution and using these actual writers' names if they're willing to do so for projects you're creating for them. So we have a whole new wave coming of really where Writer Access is going in 2014, which is why I wanted to introduce, first of all, this Snap, Crackle, and Pop. Second of all, this book, which I think is going to really help people, which really gets into a nitty-gritty analysis of, okay, when I pay 5 cents a word, what do I get? Show me what that is. Or when I pay 50 cents a word, what is better than the original paragraph? And I take the same assignment and step it all the way through all the standard orders from 2-star to 5-star, and then all the other orders ranging from copywriting to tech writing to journalism. Again, the same assignment, but pulling out the elements of what you should expect when you get more. So I think this is going to really rock, and I'm going to ask you to help spread the word of this great new piece that I've created. I think it's I wouldn't say revolutionary, but it's insightful and entertaining, hopefully, along the way as well. So there ends my presentation. I should probably start that again and leave you with that last slide. Yeah, I'll leave you with this slide. All right, you know what? I'll leave you with this slide, even better. So without further ado, I want to invite everyone to ask some questions now, and Glenn is going to chime in. We've got a lot of questions. Thank you so much. Heather, you ready to fend off some questions?
I am ready.
Sounds good. And Heather, could you just talk for a minute while Glenn's going to queue up some questions here, and myself as well? Could you just tell everyone a little bit about what you do, what SEO copywriting is all about, and all that fun stuff? And I think you have a special offer for people that want to take their writing to the next level as well. So could you talk about that for a little bit, and then we'll dive into some questions, everyone.
Thank you. I certainly can. So SEO copywriting, or I should say that I've been in the search marketing arena for almost 16 years. So back in the day when I started doing this, there was no Google. Google wasn't even on the horizon. And SEO at that time was all about the technical tips and tricks of how you could spam the various engines in order to get where you wanted it to be. And slowly I've seen a major major change in the industry, which has been so wonderful, going from what kinds of technical things do we need to do to people really focusing on the content, not just saying content is king, because we've heard this for years, but actually spending the time and spending the money and the resources to make sure that the content that they create is very customer focused. It has that snap, crackle, and pop. It answers people's questions. It gets them excited about their company or their services or their products. And so where I come in is certainly we provide writing services as well, but the main thing I do is help people learn how to do that, because there are a lot of people, whether they are freelancers or they might be working in-house, that are a little afraid of the SEO stuff, or they might know a little bit, but because they keep reading different things in different areas, they're not quite sure how to do it correctly, and they know that correctly is a big deal. So what I have is a 3-month SEO copywriting certification training where I lead people through the latest and greatest of what is good, not just for Google. And certainly I update everything on a very frequent basis to make sure that that is the latest and greatest of what's good for Google, but more importantly, how to write in a way that will grab your reader's attention and not let go. And so if this is something that you're interested in, again, this could be someone, you could be a freelancer, or you could be working in-house, and you need to have some sort of training, but going to a conference or doing anything that would be a little bit heavier might be difficult for you. If you go to SEOcopywriting.com, which is right there on the screen, you will see a link that says Learn SEO Copywriting, and you'll be able to read more about the training. And if you choose to sign up for the training by Monday, then there is a special 20% discount, which saves you about $150, a little bit more, if you use coupon code ACCESS, and that is all caps, ACCESS. And I'm happy to extend that to you guys, because I know that if you're here today, content is a big thing in your world and you want to learn how to do it better. So if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, feel free to learn more about me and the certification training on the site.
Awesome. And I have a couple questions for you, Heather, myself. First of all, we'll get that coupon information and stuff out to everybody that was registered, so don't worry about writing it down or doing anything too crazy. But
oh, awesome. Thank you.
You bet. But, you know, Heather, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about this, the tension that has existed over the many years now of SEO and quality writing, and, you know, sort of this this forced situation that we seem to have on our face in our workplace. SEO department over here, writing department over here. Can the two get together? Can the two coexist? Obviously, this is a myth, and the two need to be united. But what is your latest and greatest take on some of these challenges that we've all faced? I mean, do we want to abandon SEO and optimizing content, or do we want to continue optimizing content for the bots and the search engines particularly?
That's a really good question, and about every year or so, there is always at least one headline out there that says SEO copywriting is dead, and I laugh every time I read it. Certainly, it has changed a lot. So once upon a time, the definition, which was never my definition, but what a lot of SEOs kicked out there, and agencies as well, and these aren't just the folks that send you the spammy emails. These are really well-known companies that speak at conferences and are folks that you would think would know better. Their definition of SEO content was, let's pay the least amount of money we possibly can. Let us try to push as many key phrases into the content as we possibly can, and if nobody takes action, we don't really care, because it's up there at the top of the search results, so we've got that top-of-mind awareness in Google. And fortunately, that has changed. Now, certainly there are always going to be the people that believe that just because. But what I'm seeing now is within the industry there is a shift that it's not just kicking out content for the sake of content. It's not content marketing just because. It is developing content that is really well written and well researched, and that they have spent the money in order to get those professional writers. Now, does that mean because Google has changed things that professional writers no longer need to know about SEO? No. Certainly those on-page things are still important. You still want to be able to research key phrases. If nothing else, it is good market research that we never had access to way back in the day when I first started. And there are things about how to write a title that's clickable, that still positions well, but gets that click off the search results page, and how to structure your copy in a way so Google knows that your site is relevant for a particular theme. These are all things that are really important. So certainly where I see the industry heading is back to what copywriting and SEO copywriting has always supposed to be. People just like to try to mix it up and make it seem easier and spammier than it was. It's good writing. Certainly you need to know how the search engines work and what's going on in the industry to really ace your job. That's important. I think that if you're a writer working in the SEO space without being up to date with that, you're missing out on really important opportunities. But at the same time, it is also going back to that creative brief, figuring out how to get inside your reader's head, going back to the copywriting fundamentals that we have known for many, many years, David Ogilvie and Bob Bly and folks even before that, of how to write the content that will really get the results you want. So we're not 100% there yet. Certainly I'll still hear about somebody who wants to optimize a page for X key phrases with a wide key phrase density, and it makes me cringe a little bit. But I think that as everything integrates more and that customer and reader experience becomes even more important, it's not just about the ranking, it's about the conversion and the engagement. And as writers and authors have their writing tied to Google authorship, so they can be proud of that work and show it off and have their face next to the search result, these are the things that are changing the game with SEO copywriting. So it's always been a growing field. Now it's at the time that it's really, really exciting because you're able to really use your creativity. It's not something that people are thinking, why are you spending so much time writing the content? Now they're slowly starting to get, this is the reason why you spend so much time writing the content, and that time pays off.
Someone's got a question for you, Heather. Heather, it says, there is a conflict between the quantity of times you have to post a day and the level of the quality of the content. Can you comment on this dichotomy? Can I do one high-quality piece a week and still rank highly on Google, or do I still need to post 3 or 4 times per week?
That's always an interesting question, and I'm sure, Byron, you've got your own opinions on this as well, because as I had said earlier, content marketing is not just about shoving a bunch of stuff out there to see what sticks. Ideally what you're writing is really good quality stuff. And if you are providing that good quality stuff, people will hang on. So I know people that will blog once a week, but that blog post is excellent. They do everything they can to be able to provide a really good in-depth, informative type of post that they're able to then share with their social networks and be able to get that love and that traffic back to their site. Having said that, something to consider is that when you can kick out more things on social that, again, are quality and relevant, that does encourage participation, either in terms of engagement on, say, Twitter or Google+, or it also helps people come back to the site. So if, for you personally, if posting more than once a week is not possible for you, there are things that you can do, including, bring in guest posters, and that way you've always got a fresh, new amount of traffic coming to your site every day, plus those guest posters are then able to say, hey, I just wrote for, say, the SEO copywriting blog, here's my article, so you might get in new traffic. You can curate content where you're pulling together the best of the best in your particular vertical. Maybe bring someone on to do this. And even if that's not possible, say you're a business of one, the thought of bringing on guest posts and having someone help you in that capacity just isn't going to work, I would still recommend even taking those old guest posts that you've written and bringing those out on social media, making sure that you have a presence there and engaging more. So that way it's not like you're only online, so to speak, one time a week. You always have a presence, but people also know that on Thursdays that is your blog post. So certainly it's something to watch the traffic. I noticed that when I post on my blog post on Thursdays, traffic typically spikes because people are looking for that post. Not that it's not good during the other days of the week, but I do notice that kind of spike. If we don't blog for a while, say during the holidays, then the traffic goes down, which makes sense. So there's something to consider with that as well.
And just to chime in on that, Heather, so yeah, this is the question that is asked at Writer Access with regards to content strategy all day, every day. You know, how much content do I need? How frequently do I need to publish it? And there's a couple simple rules, and that is, you know, the more the better, but the better the better. Those are the two rules. The more the better, but the better the better. So in the end of the day, let's face it, no matter what your industry is, what your niche is, there's a lot of content that you could write about, all right? That's the problem, and that's what Google is faced with in making decisions on who should receive a top listing in the search engines. If your goal is to increase traffic and to connect better with your customers and to turn browsers into believers and believers into buyers, you need to publish a lot of content. And that's the bottom line. And you need to tap into the conversations and be smart about what you publish, and and that just is what it is. That's why Google rewards people like Heather, because she has a reputation. She's an authority in her industry. She speaks at the conferences. She has all the ducks lined up to prove to Google that she's an authority in her space. She has the friends, the family, the retweets, the net casted very widely, and that's what people need to do. Now, when you're starting out, you need to get very good at the quality part of the game, I would argue, because when you start focusing on the quality element, you will get what Google wants from you, which is how many of these or how many comments are being posted on that blog post. How often is it shared and passed around? What's the reach, the clout of the person that wrote it? Those are the critical elements. But once you get that established with your fan base and your reader base, then it's time to accelerate and to go all in with content marketing. Here are the sad realities, okay? The sad realities are content and content marketing is still only, 30% of marketing spend, and that's really looking at larger to mid-sized companies. Smaller companies are not there yet. They don't get it. Writers, in my opinion, are undervalued right now in the marketplace. People are not getting it. They're not getting the importance of storytelling, the importance of a perpetual steady stream of content. I argue that optimization is the new SEO. Let's just drop search and engine from SEO, and it's all about optimization. And optimization is understanding that it will help you to have the spider bots come visit your site every day to see what fresh new content you have coming up. It absolutely will help your fan base if you're publishing a steady stream of fresh, high-quality content. Once again, more is better. The more stimulation you can provide to your reader base and the search engine bots, I say the better. So I'm for big. I'm for going big, but you have to prove that out. And you have to prove it out to yourself that it's worth you producing one amazing blog post a day, that it's riveting, that's engaging, that's covering not just the same boring topics of, insurance and liability insurance and different kinds of insurance. You need to talk about the wants and needs of your customers, which are more about risk aversion and how you get a cat out of a tree, and other things that are relevant and important that publishers do a very good job of in thousands of different niches. Think like a publisher. I love saying forward-thinking companies are starting to think like old-school publishers, gathering ideas, developing stories, and publishing a steady stream of content, which is propelling the whole model. So that's the goal. That's what we need to do. But that's hard to do, you know. And Heather, where are you, you know, like philosophically these days with in-house writers? I know you train a lot of in-house writers and a lot of content creators. You know, do you feel like you can use the talent of professional writers to help your content marketing strategy? Are you all for like in-house do-it-yourself? Because you know, I've known you forever, and be honest, it's not. Some people don't like ghostwriting, and you know, it might not be relevant, or even polishers or editors to fix their content. Where are you on that these days?
That's a really good question, and certainly I think, and I've recently wrote a blog post about this, is one of the easiest ways that you can source low-cost quality content is in-house. And it doesn't mean that suddenly your engineer colleague is suddenly going to turn into an SEO copywriter and be able to crank out really good copy. That's not necessarily true. You always have to have an editor in place. A lot of times that editor is outsourced. But certainly those people in-house that are already evangelists for your company, they love what you do. Say Zappos is an example. Their employees blog a lot, and those blogs will point to product pages. So even if you don't necessarily land on a page about boots, you can read a post that's really interesting where somebody is talking about a pair of boots, and there's the product page. And so that's a really great way for in-house folks to look at it. There are a lot of things that go into that to make sure that the content that's coming out is coming out on time, and making sure that the content is truly quality. Now, having said that, I also work with a lot of freelancers and train those as well, and a lot of businesses have a blind spot around how to write their own content. They're too close to it. A lot of times it's because that they don't have the time to really sit down and do it well. And what they find happens is that they have these really awful, crappy sales pages that have been up forever, or really bad blog page posts, or they aren't blogging at all. You look at their site and realize that their blogs come in once every couple months or so, if that. If that's what's going on, then those companies really need to bite the bullet and hire high-quality folks that can help them. Because it's not just, as Byron was talking about, create the content. It's creating what Eric Inge is another person in our industry. He talks about standout content. So you're not just writing another article about how to get a mortgage. You're writing an article from a different slant that nobody else is doing, and so that's that content that stands out. That's what gets rewarded by Google. And in-house, sometimes it can be very hard to do that because you're constantly thinking about these issues and you're on your own head all the time, and you don't have that kind of broader perspective. But when you can bring in a professional writer who knows your industry or can learn your industry, that person can find all these different ways to be able to help promote you. And suddenly those crappy sales pages are transformed into ones that are making you money. And the blog posts that weren't there suddenly are there and are able to start driving traffic. So the sad thing is that a lot of companies see copywriting as an unnecessary expense. They'll spend $100,000 or more on building a website, and then they argue with a writer saying, I need this, and I'm only willing to pay $50 for it. And that's not the right conversation to have. Good writing should make companies money. And if you're in a position where you can't do it in-house, whether it's time, whether nobody in-house is skilled, whether you feel like you're too close to it, whatever, once you realize that your content is lacking, then you are doing your company a disservice by not finding a writer that can come in and do it for you. And that writer isn't necessarily going to be the lowest bidder. That's someone that you know that you can partner with and is going to actually be sort of an outsourced member of your team and a partner. And once you have that person, it's amazing how everything changes, and a website that might have been kind of stagnant before suddenly is new and fresh, is bringing in new leads, making new sales, and everyone in the company gets excited then because they see the potential, where before it was just kind of this slog of, yeah, you can look at our website to learn more, but they start apologizing for their website right after they say that, which is never good to say to a prospect. So certainly hiring professional writers is a really, really smart thing to do.
Indeed. And I also worry about creative talent on this subject. We're at the end of the hour, but I just want to cast in one more piece to this. Writers are, the most, we've seen this historically in the advertising and marketing industry as a whole. When you make the jump over to the client side of the table, it's sort of like, oh, bummer, they kind of cashed out their creativity, and they are now working for one client for the rest of their natural life. So the environment isn't as creative. You're stuck with one client that you're trying to move forward. I don't have a problem with that because companies need that in-house. But I do think that writers also need to be creative. They need to work with different clients, and that's where some of the best writing really comes to the market. And so that creativity, that diversity, that's where professional writers, I think, will continue to make a living, taking their talent and bringing it to various companies, not just one company. That's just kind of the nature of the creative business in general. You look at how agencies are built up. So I think there's great future and great hope for writing. And even at Writer Access, we believe that we are now in a position to invite premium writers to come to our platform. They will only work for $1 per word, right? Like, what, Byron? $1? Yes. $1 per word. You would just say, my minimum rate is $1 per word. I only want to work on copywriting projects that are creative and interesting, and here's the profile of the type of client I'm looking for, somebody that values content and has creative and interesting products and services, is willing to let me be creative with the type of work I'm doing. Sign me up for a client like that, But everyone else that wants, 5 cents per word and, sort of a quick turnaround blog post to fuel the search engines, not interested, So that will be where this marketplace goes, I believe, and we want to be there on the forefront of that, which is why conversations like the one today on Snap, Crackle, and Pop and revealing to the world that there are amazing writers out there, and they need to shine, and they need to make their way to the forefront of this revolution happening with content marketing. So that's what today's presentation was all about. But thank you so much for being with me today, Heather. Awesome stuff.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Indeed. We'll get some contact information for Heather out to people. You'll have a link over to her site where you can get a special deal with a coupon code she's given everyone. Her course is awesome. She's awesome. And we hope you enjoyed this presentation today. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Until next month, we hope your life's a little smarter, better, faster, and wiser with the help of this webinar on Snap, Crackle, Pop your content so it converts. Thanks, everyone. See you next
Thank you.
month. See you, Heather. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye, all.